Hey folks, Richard here. I wasn't planning on making a video, but things pop up. I'll first plug my blog, Facts for Working People. The URL is weknowwhatsup.blogspot.com, no apostrophes or anything. And so I was sitting out on the porch. I wanted to do this on the porch where I normally do them, but there's some louder music and I couldn't, I had to come inside. But I'm reading a couple of I'm reading a book right now. I went to see that woman, Mary Gauthier. She did that song, Mercy Now, which I posted on Facebook. It's a very powerful song. Made me think. I went to see her last Wednesday, her and her musical partner and their partners in life. Her partner's also a musician. It was a great show. She's a great songwriter. But I was reading her book, and I happened to take a break, and I flipped on the phone and I went to TikTok, and there was a TikTok shit thing shared by she's not a friend of mine, Amelia. I don't think she's a friend of mine. She might be a friend of mine. And it was about a guy talking about women and the taxes they pay and it was talking about the women's body and about menopause and about periods. And I remember being at work because we had women in the workplace. I was a blue collar workplace, but the fact that a woman menstruates, is that the right word? Bleeds every month, and she feels sick by it sometimes, and it's not sickness, it's not a sick leave, it's part of being human. It's just a part of their body, what happens with their bodies. And you got to remember, these are the humans that carry the new humans. So it was an interesting thing by this guy, and it made me think about that, about women's bodies. And when I sometimes think about women, I think about them a lot of the time, but and about the women, I've always been sort of fascinated by them. And of course, in terms of my orientation, what they talk about, that stuff called orientation, it's toward them. I like them. I like their bodies. I like them personally. I've had many women friends in my life as well, and of course my mum was one, as they say. And but it's all sort of fascinating me. I mean, they're different, but they got bodies, they got the arms and legs and this and that and the other, but there's all this other stuff. And this guy happened to bring it up in a very interesting way about what women deal with in their lives. And of course, I got a touch of that when I was active in the union, and the issues of the bathroom for women, the periods for women, and being off when they don't feel well. But I remember my mum, and my mum left school, she told me at 14, and she was a working class woman, very skilled. She's skilled in a lot of ways. She did a lot of stuff. And but I remember that she had. I grew up in my father was an alcoholic. I grew up in a pub. He was physically abusive to me. And in fact, Mary Gauthier's song, "Mercy Now," you should listen to it, made me think: was I too hard on my dad? He was hard on me, but he was also hard on my mum and my sister. And it was very difficult. Must have been. I never heard my dad tell my mum he loved her. I don't think. I never saw affection between them, and real affection. In fact, I got a picture after my mother had the stroke and died that I think my sister gave me, and my mum and dad, and she's leaning on him and she's smiling. A guy broke into tears. I've never seen such affection or seen her feeling that way. And the pub life was part of it. When she married him, when she was 20 or so. That she went to Burma, where I was born. She went then Nigeria. She lived in the army. In some ways, was a very nice and exotic for her traveling like that. But when I was in my 20s, early 20s, it was in London, and she was going through menopause. I didn't know she was going through menopause, but it was very, very hard. I know my dad was talking about my mum. He had to go down and pick her up. My mum was born in London. She was in London during the Blitz, slept in subways during the Blitz, was eventually shipped up to Grantham in Lincolnshire, worked on aircraft engines, putting the Spitfire, the guns on the Spitfire's wings or whatever they did. She worked in those factories, and I used to tease her because I said she used to love to dance. And I said, well, who could you dance with up there? And she sort of a little smile, she said, Americans. Because when our boys were over fighting, Americans were over in England and so forth. But so she was a tough bloody cookie. And but this menopause, I just thought it's crazy. What does it mean? I mean, she was frozen in the street. He had to drive down and pick her up. She went through a lot of horrible experiences, agoraphobia, or is it where you open spaces, this terrifying fear. And I had no idea. My poor dad, what would he know? They didn't teach us any of those things. But anyway, it made me think about my mum then. But also, I got some notes that I sent to a feminist website at one point, that I found when my mother had a stroke and she eventually died from it. But I want to read a couple of pieces. I kept these notes because it reminded me of, I thought I had it bad. She says here in October 97, he was a charming man, my dad, but he was an alcoholic and he drank. Mary Gauthier has a song called I Drink. It's worth listening to. My mum says, it seems dreadful that I'm called all the names he can lay his tongue to and nobody knows. This is when he drank. I did tape it once, but I don't know what mood he comes in with. Sometimes he comes in not bad and I just have to say something that triggers him off and away we go again. The most hurtful thing is that I don't get sorry or I didn't mean it. We have a few days of not talking because I'm upset, then it's back to normal. Well, if I sulk, I'm upset. Because I'm upset, I get called childish or a little baby. I go to darts. My mother won darts contest. That was, she loved to play darts. And I have the trophies. I go to darts on those days and I'm useless. I get annoyed with myself because I can't throw well. How can you leave your home at the age of 77, she says. I wish I could find a nice little one-room flat, but you get frightened at this age, and the man knows it. So he's saying to himself, she won't leave, she hasn't got the bottle. That means courage in our language back then. I just wish I had. And she had a lot more power than she thought, and she was very skilled. She goes on, what a foul mouth he has. How can you want to be in someone's company that calls you a whore, lazy, not worth a wank? And I say, when I think of my lovely mum and dad who were she says then, when I think of my lovely mum and dad who were so gentle and didn't give off a stream of foul words. But anyway, just this last one here. Another afternoon, wondering what mood he will be in when he comes home. It was very abusive, with fists raised in my face. How can I tell anyone? Nobody would believe me. I keep it to myself. So does he. He's entirely different when someone is about. I felt so well after the USA because nothing like this happened, but I feel on the downward slope again. I just don't want to be ill again. The stress is awful. Why I never left him years ago, I don't know. And what terrible names he calls me in his drunken state. It's so hurtful. I'm a bit too old to move now. And the funny thing is that I, when I took the abuse, the physical abuse, is a strange. This is what it can happen in the family. This holy family, it can be a bloody trap. It's where abuse and violence is legitimized in a lot of ways, and it's changed a lot, domestic violence laws and everything else. But I used to blame my mum. Because I remember I thought, why is she allowing this? She's the other adult. I'm probably 11, 12. Started when I got to develop into a young man, physical abuse. I mean, and belts and belt buckles and sticks and things you could get his hands on. But that I remember that movie, Defending Our Lives. It was about women that were in jail for killing their husbands. They waited, some of them, till they were asleep, things like that. I was involved in a couple of those cases where one woman in Chicago or Detroit, where she'd wait till he was asleep and then killed him. I mean, the only amendment to a resolution I ever got at an AFSCME International Convention was I had introduced an amendment that domestic violence, battered women syndrome be used as a legal defense in cases where women murder their abusers. I mean, if you're 100 pounds and the guy that's kicking your ass every week is 250, you're going to wait till it evens up a little bit, But anyway, I thought about that and how we are these two. We're both human, but their bodies and everything. They carry our children. They carry the human beings that. And they've been punished for it in many ways, because with the advent of class society and property and everything else, the male who they're passing on of property, they've suffered because of that. And anyway, that was just my thought. And I hope over the years I learned a lot of things about women that I should have known when I was young. But anyway, those were my thoughts today.